Isn't that Greek? Kairos? So is Aletheia. Someone might be Greek. Or have some kind of connection to Greece. Alright, so let us look. 933 on the clock. Are you kidding me? 933. All the 5s and the 3s repeating themselves. This is not a joke. Alright, let's look up the seed. LXV1. This, and then I flipped to the maiden, which we had earlier. And the mother. Okay, you can't. Wow, okay, phases. Planting seeds in different phases of your life, and then the queen and the river. Okay. You know what? Listen here, Spirit. Enough. Let's get to the point. They're like using the book pages to divine more messages since I stopped pulling cards. They can be kind of funny that way sometimes. If you're a psychic medium and know what the heck I'm talking about, feel free to leave a chuckle in the comments. I don't know. Let's see here. So if L is, we're just going to say it's 50, I don't know, 10 with the X, IV, so that would be 64. 64 could be important to you. I was seeing 604 on the clock a lot earlier in the week, so that could be important. It could be a birthday, it could be something that happened on June 4th. You could be 64 years of age, you could be 60. I doubt a 4-year-old's listening to this message, but you never know. I hope not. Please watch your children. Anyways, page 1. Why am I reading 192 for the offering? Okay, that was significant. Beginnings and endings in partnership with the offering. Someone's thinking about offering something to somebody in partnership, and that doesn't have to be romantic, but that keeps coming up. And it seems like somebody in the collective wants to talk about that, but I'm going to tell you, you know, we're going to save that for the tarot quest, okay? So page 196 is the seed. 196, 96 could all be significant synchronistic numbers for you, or 197. Maybe you were born in 96 or 97. Maybe you're 19. If you're 96 or 97 listening to this, holy cow, thank you for being here. That's so cool, you. Alright, so I don't usually read the entire book because I like to inspire people to go out and actually purchase people's decks. So I'm just going to read what calls to me here. This song is called Sirens, by the way. That could be significant for somebody. I felt like I needed to mention it. So this says here, one of the alchemist's favorite images was the pearl, the irritant. Over time becomes the treasure. What is your grit? That's an interesting message. Kind of complex. I'm going to read that one more time. And also, there is a pearl in the middle of this oracle card, and then it looks like the inside rings of a tree, like really tightly wound. Okay, so that might help somebody visually. Kind of like a spiral around a treasure I'm getting. I usually do read into these, but let me reread this for you. One of the alchemist's favorite images was the pearl. The irritant, over time, becomes the treasure. What is your grit? You know, we were talking about change and people being irritated by change. This is making me think, how can your challenges or change, I'm seeing the Tower card in my mind's eye. How can you embrace the Tower? How can you embrace unexpected change and use the annoyance, the irritants of that situation to actually benefit you? Also, do you know what bothers you when you're under stress or pressure, or you're just rushing around all the time? Do you know how to slow down? Do you know how to see the treasures in life? Do you know how to spot something beautiful and unique amongst the garbage? Do you know how to be mindful? Are you aware? Do you sometimes feel like you're the treasure surrounded by irritants. I feel like that if I'm in a large crowd of people. But then again, I'm an introvert, so there's that. Social anxiety's been coming a lot in this reading I'm picking up. And when we're thinking about the things that bother us, that could also be perceived weaknesses or cracks or whatever in our personalities, it's important to empower ourselves. When we know how to center and ground and calm ourselves and regulate our emotions, we can actually gain more control over our psyche and the anxieties that happen, okay? I know this from personal experience. I went from preferring to be in the background, kind of let people come to me, again, an introvert, but I have had social anxiety in my life. And through years and years of mindfulness, I taught myself how to be aware of my emotional regulation habits, right? So experiencing what I'm experiencing, understanding what I'm experiencing, and then developing that further, understanding what triggers the discomfort. Why is it a discomfort? Then you take it to the spiritual level and you go, well, how can I unearth this further? Or dive into the abyss like we were talking about. This is also, if we're talking about the seed, we're talking about where were things planted in your childhood. Inner child work was coming up earlier. Some of you might want to look at limiting beliefs from your childhood that made you think certain things about yourself. Sometimes we over-identify with labels. This is why I'm a big proponent of not being put in a box, because while it's good to identify with things, that only really appeases structures and systems and the ego and identity. Well, yes, you may identify with loving the color blue, but are you the color blue? No? Okay. Well, that's just a color you like, right? Right. That doesn't mean that you're a good or bad person or anything else. It just means you like color blue, right? So what if you were to take all the irritations around, we'll use the anxiety as an understanding. What if you were to take everything that pushed you to that point and you were to break it down, pull it apart, look at it? This is the positive side of Virgo, and we are in Virgo season, so this is about looking at the fine details. And since we're going to be coming into the Pisces full moon in September with the lunar eclipse, the polar opposite, we're also looking at way expanding for the next 6 months into Pisces ideologies, the vision, the dream, right? So if you want to have one last look at all the nitty gritty and you really want to get to the heart of why you're feeling anxious or stressed or worried, whether you have anxiety or not about something in your life, inner child work healing, looking at the seeds that were planted, ask yourself, was that my original thought or is that something that somebody told me, right? Because that's how triggers are created as well. And when you can spot your triggers and you can spot your weaknesses, you can break them down and you can actually heal them. And some of you do this with a professional, or you're considering it, and I'm an advocate, so I say go for it. There's nothing wrong with getting someone to talk to about things, right? Having emotional support helps you get through these things. Pisces is also very much about emotional intelligence. Just like Scorpio and Cancer, the water signs in the zodiac, the cups in the tarot, right? This is the time with this Virgo new moon energy to really pick apart the finer details of what is irritating you in your life, especially when it comes around your inner child healing, where it comes to unexpected change. Perhaps you're somebody who had an inconsistent parent in your life. For some of you, I'm picking up, you may have had a Gemini erratic person in your life as a parent. That's only for a specific person or a couple. It was just a side message I just picked up. It could have taught you to, one, be able to go with the flow, but also to always expect that when things that are unexpected happen, that it's going to be chaos and that your world is going to fall apart. Therefore, you cling to the expected And you also always assume that people are going to be erratic and not come through for you. That's for somebody else. Ask yourself, what seeds are you planting in your own head now that come from the root of a problem which started in childhood? And make friends with your shadow. They're going to help guide you. You can aspect the many different sides of yourself. There's the shadow, there's the light, there's the mother, there's the father, there's the child, and there's multiple phases of the child, right? You can do this through spiritual guidance. You can do this through meditation. You can do this through therapy. You can do it even by, you could find old photographs of yourself, look through the pictures, and allow yourself to receive whatever comes up. Sometimes it's hard, so maybe you do want somebody who's more experienced who can guide you through that process. Sometimes there's things that have happened that we didn't know happened until the memory comes up later, okay? So really look at also what you're nurturing, what you're growing, and remember that it's a process to be patient. Yet again, going back to the 7 Pentacles in my mind's eye. Anyways, I want to read a little more from this book. Remember, though, to know when to stop with your deep diving. Remember, with the Abyss, the one thing you learn with that movie is that you can only plunge so far before you cannot stay there anymore. You can only go so deep with your human capacity into something. Call it spiritual spelunking if you must, okay? This is why having a guide or having experience before you do these deep spiritual dives can be really helpful. Because if you're new to this, unless you're an extremist, you really don't want to go for the deep dive right away. And if you do, know that sometimes you can get stuck in the depths. And if you haven't processed things from your childhood, you could get yourself stuck. So definitely it's good to have a friend, it's good to have a guide, it's good to have some kind of professional. There are hypnotherapists that can also help you with these kinds of things. So look into a multitude of ways of doing this, okay? And remember your limits. Set parameters, right? We were talking about shamanism earlier, and I was talking about being a spiritual guide. So I feel like this is coming up strong. Possibly some of you are being initiated as a shaman. You're interested in, you're curious about it. Or you consider yourself a medicine worker or a healer, or you do guide others. For some of you, I'm getting that you could be a death doula to helping people transition, which that is beautiful work. Something that not everybody knows about me, but I've talked about on my channel a few times. I was actually born and raised in the funeral industry. So I am quite familiar with the dying process and transformation, having a Scorpio South node. I talk about how my childhood was very much a representation of transformation and death, and that wasn't a joke. Okay? Your South node is what you're bringing in from your last life, not only your gifts, but also your trauma, right? And as we are developing our personalities and growing into our North Node, which usually happens around the Saturn return, to some people, they have to go through a couple North Node returns, or they never follow their North Node. Just depends on the soul's journey, right? That's your future destiny. That's what you're turning into. And that's usually the opposite sign, not usually, it is always the opposite sign of where you came from. Yet again, making that transformation from the past into the present to the future. For some of you, you're timeline jumping. Anyways, I just felt like that was important because the next thing in the book I was going to mention here was the true seed is elusive. If we follow any story toward its origin, it spirals farther and farther back in time. In this way, we are always the seed and always the fruit it bears. All right, so that made me think, remember, have limits on how far you're going to journey. Perhaps set parameters of certain things you don't want to dive into. If you're working with spirit, talk to spirit about it. If you're working with God, talk to God. If you're talking to Hecate, talk to Hecate. Whoever you're working with. I know Hecate just came up. I think I'm going to close this out. By the way, the stone is the next page, and the stone came up earlier. Some of you need to cement your plans. You need to ground your plans. That you've set seeds, you've set intentions, you're manifesting something huge. It's very precious to you. You're very protective of it. You'll destroy anything that comes in the way of it, but you need to ground your plan, or you need to ground while you're manifesting. That just came through for somebody. So I'm going to close this out with the middle paragraph here, and I'm going to leave just a little bit out so you can explore it yourself sometime if you buy the deck. Like I said, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm sorry if I'm a little raspy. I apologize. Actually, I don't apologize. It's my voice. Whatever. Get over it. Love ya. All right. Beginnings come in many forms. They are not always a beautiful seed placed intentionally in nourishing soil. Origin stories, like any birth story, are complex, surprising, multi-layered, and usually reveal a central image or detail that represents the fully formed being. Simply stated, the end is present in the beginning. Wow, y'all, we were talking about the world card earlier. My channeled message, I was talking about beginnings and endings. I was talking about transformation. I was talking about Pluto. I was talking about all kinds of things. So this is all tying in and closing out the reading. We started about a message of beginnings and endings, and we are ending a message about beginnings and endings. Some of you are closing major chapters and taking a leap of faith, or you've already planted seeds towards it. If so, I wish you luck on your journey. Congratulations on your new start. You must be in full energy, or you're about to launch off into that leap of faith. Anyways, congratulations. I'm proud of you. I am personally going through a similar journey, so it's definitely a collective vibe, all right? Anyways, in the book here it says, reveal a central image or detail that represents the fully formed being. Simply stated, the end is present in the beginning, or the entire oak tree resides within the acorn. Whether you follow this imaginal theory or not, know that when this card appears, there is potent generative energy all around. It stirs your very insides and usually results in an antsy, impatient feeling. My goodness, this is so what we were channeling early, y'all. I mean, we're going back to, I said it looks like the rings of a tree. Okay, that's not a huge deal, right? There's also a song by the White Stripes that's coming to me right now, Little Acorns, I think it is. It's a great, hilarious song about a woman and a squirrel, and it kind of reminds me of my own journey on the mountain. So if you're curious, check out that song. That's for somebody. And also here, let's see, what was it saying? Potent generative energy all around. You're talking about what you're growing, what you're building, what you're creating, manifesting. And then it's talking about antsy, impatient feelings. We're talking about that erratic Gemini air energy that can happen. And by the way, that's not putting down Geminis or erratic energy. There's a time and a place. You guys make great floaters on the work team, let me tell you. When I used to work with other people, y'all made great floaters in team building. You also love to travel. We were talking about travel and long distance travel earlier. So the rest of this says, oh my goodness, pay particular attention to what agitates you, as it is a sure sign of growth to come. You are bumping up against a growth edge. It is from the grit that the pearl eventually comes to be. And what the heck was I telling y'all about getting nitty gritty, finding out what bugs you, what makes you uncomfortable with change, right? I've never read this page for this card. Never read it. When I channel into something, I am using my psychic gifts to pick up on messages from the collective through spirit. So that was the beginning and ending of this reading. If I decide to still do a tarot